So I went out for a walk and I realized um, often people struggle with promises or promises to keep, but that's a different thing. But mostly about when promises are promised to you, or even promises that you would like, or promises that you wouldn't like, which would switch into, let's say, curses, right? Whether it is psychological curses, um, spiritual. So a curse or a promise have a very distinct feature to them. It's that they are time bound, they are temporal, they are temporal, they exist somewhere on the timeline, right? Through which you navigate this reality, this simulation. So often we are faced with promises or curses either we are doing to ourselves or others have spoken to us, right? And just like if you take the analogy of physical matter, in order to nullify physical matter, you would have to throw it in some kind of singularity. Well, a temporal or a time singularity is always kind of the now, the present moment, right? Whether it is scientifically or spiritually. So, in order to, what I think, to nullify the effect of promises, curses, is to draw them to the present moment, to the now. And therefore, they collapse into that singularity. They lose their meaning because the nature of a promise or a curse is time bound. So when you take the time bounding away, uh, then it's just a thing that is, right? Then it loses its definition because it no longer occurs, because the curse occurred in the now, and the promise is just an is. And then it loses its time bound definition, and the caster of the promise or the curse always do so in the time temporal bounding structure. So you can take as the curse, and the curse or the promise is often spoken linguistically. You can do the same by drawing those promises and curses into the present moment, into the now. Of course, that perhaps requires the state of the now, spiritually speaking, psychologically speaking. So that way, perhaps even you can nullify karma through that, if you allow it to let it go. It's actually interesting because intuitively, what we do with karma, we push it away, right? But the now, you can say, always exists in a very center point of our being, right? A kind of time singularity that we are. So instead of pushing that away, you can pull it by a kind of temporal gravitational force. And then kind of pull it inside of you. Yeah. So how does that work psychologically speaking? Let's say someone promised you a great future. And obviously, if you want it, you have to pull it to the now in order to manifest it. Uh, or like, let's say, I curse you to a life of misery. In order to compress that life of misery, you have to pull it to the now also, and compress the curse in a way, right? Temporarily in order to nullify it, because a life of misery compressed to a temporal singularity that doesn't exist anymore, because the life becomes like a compressed, like a second or whatever you desire, right? So um, karmic time manipulation, yes, to nullify the karma, or to yeah, you can say a happy life can be also compressed, but you want it in the now. So it has, it is like you collapse the adversarial nature of the action of compressing it into your now, because no matter whether you like it or you don't like it, doing the same thing equals a positive result. But this is actually linguistically very interesting, that uh, the compression itself, the drawing it in the now, create a collapse of whatever kind of adversarial opposition, and then it becomes a complementary, non-adversarial complementary, thing. So yeah, I had this thought on my walk, um, I was not wearing these glasses on the walk, because I bought these glasses for 10 euro, because I feel like it has like two colors, the blue and the yellow, which signifies the somewhat um, Shiva Shakti in a way, the witness and the love. And also it gives this idea that I'm not particularly trying to look only cool, but also a little bit intellectual, you see. And you can kind of hear that about the way I speak. Um, more eloquent, in a more of sophisticated nature. Yeah, so uh, that's interesting to try out for yourself, that if you want to nullify promises. Well, I don't know how it works when you have to keep a promise to someone else. I think that's kind of different, because you cannot say, okay, I made this promise to someone. Well, actually, no, that's the interesting part, because once you make a promise and you bring it to the now, you have to still bring it to the now of the other person, right? So it kind of works in a similar way, but instead of bringing it to your own now singularity, you have to bring it to the other's now singularity. So because it's an equal, because once you make a promise to someone else, then you have to apply it, the promise, the execution of it, in the now for yourself, and then for the other person. So it becomes a relational event, a two temporal nuclei event, and this is kind of interesting from a scientific perspective. Yes, and I wonder with the curse, maybe once the curse gets pulled into the now of the person you cursed, then perhaps it will also have an effect on you. Maybe a release, but in the same way as a release in a positive promise, when that is fulfilled, the promise is fulfilled, you feel a relief generally, because it is off your plate, right? In the same way, a curse, but if the curse is justified, because if the curse is not justified, then well, what also happens, let's say the curse gets to fruition to on the person which you cursed, and this person knows that actually it's justified, then even the release, the relief will actually also be from both sides. If the other person, let's say he knows he or she did something wrong, and he faced a punishment, then it clears two people of the debt. So it's a very interesting dimensionality where like plus the plus becomes minus and vice versa, whatever, you can figure it out mathematically speaking. But yeah, this is actually, and for sure what I'm saying is not new, but how you would think about it can be new, because let's say a promise made to you by someone can really act as a weight, as an expectation, right? Psychologically speaking, emotionally speaking, or even spiritually speaking. Let's say what a lot of spiritual people do. They make a promise, right? They promise you, I teach you this, and you're going to get this and this out of it. Often what you see, this doesn't really happen. So the caster of the promise put himself in debt to the other person. It's really quite retarded if you think about it. It makes sense if you can make it happen. Let's say you promise that the other person will feel a particular thing, energy or something like that, but it doesn't happen, then it becomes a debt, because you still made the promise, but you couldn't fulfill it. So what happens psychologically when you make constantly promises but you cannot actually fulfill them? What does that do to your psychology? Or what does that say about your psychology in the first place? That you make promises that you know you will not fulfill. So then it becomes a deception, you see. If you make promises you know you cannot fulfill, or you know you will not fulfill, then you are actually deceiving, right? You are distorting something. You are distorting the psychological and emotional and spiritual frameworks of other people. Then you yourself are a distortion. Because let's say you are a spiritual teacher, or you're a teacher in general, or whatever. You are in some position where you output something. And you promise a certain result of this, right? Well, it's a bit different when what you teach is self-contained knowledge, right? It's self-contained power, self-contained knowledge that is already apparent in the world. It's already accessible, right? You can pick it up on the floor, whatever. Like a stone. Let's say you promise someone a stone and you give a stone, right? That's it. The stone speaks for itself. But let's say you supposedly give something abstract, which is based on your standards. Let's say you can feel some energy, and you promise that others will feel the same, but they don't. Then clearly you don't have the ability to empathize with other people, because other people are other people. They're not you. They're not the same as you. Let's say you're very good at mathematics, and you promise to teach mathematics, and you say, oh, you will be as good as me, for sure, 100%. Well, no one say it's realistic, right? It's just not realistic. So you create a false expectation. You create a distortion of expectation, which is then overlaid on top of the thing, not of the content itself specifically, because the content can be quite divorced from either you or from the promise, right? Like if you promise a stone, the stone is not the stone is the promise, but also not the promise, right? Because the promise is the promise. The stone is still the stone. So let's say in spiritual frameworks, when they promise you energy, it doesn't invalidate the existence of the potential energy, even though the promise was not fulfilled of the energy, because they are actually they can coexist, but they can actually exist independently of one another, because one is a purely linguistic temporal thing, a mental, and another thing can exist on other dimensional substratas. You see? Ah, yeah. So that was a bit of a long brain fart, right? And but it does explain a lot. But that those who promise a lot but don't deliver, they either don't have empathy or they're quite retarded, or they have self-serving malicious intent. Well, it's actually, this linguistically, dimensionally, it simply can only come to that conclusion. Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm going to stop the video because it's already a bit long, and people don't like to watch long videos. So, um, yeah, if you have some questions about this, because it's quite a big topic actually, right? Uh, that one can discuss about. So if you have a question and you want to elaborate, you can make a nice question, and if it's like something that would uh, function well in another video, I could make a video of your question. Yeah? Okay, bye bye. Bye bye.